A new study reveals how the Andes have shaped the history of aquatic plants. The rise of the Andes divided the landscape of Colombia. For some plants, the mountain barriers are unbreachable, leading to speciation. This post was written for Botany One by Lorena Villanueva Almanza.
The Bogotá River drops into a dramatic 132-meter waterfall known as the Salto de Tequendama, southwest of Bogotá City, Colombia. Almost 2,000 meters above sea level, one can imagine Humboldt and Bonpland wiping mist off their faces while plucking a tiny aquatic plant with lacy leaves from between the rocks. That plant now is known as Merythrum faeniculiceum and, for the untrained eye, can easily be mistaken for algae. The pair of naturalists wrote in 1806, "We found it only once on the rocks of Salto de Tequendama, on the verge of a very dangerous precipice of nearly 195 meters." The Salto de Tequendama is the result of the pushing and lifting of the Earth's crust giving rise to the Andes in an ongoing process that began nearly 11 million years ago. Plant scientists have known that the hoist of the Andes was a melting pot for biodiversity, but water-loving plants, like Merythrum faeniculiceum and its sister species Merythrum utile, remained overlooked. Now, a study shows how the history of South America's longest continental mountain range has determined the fate of this pair of plants. Both species diverged around 17 million years ago, unable to exchange genes because of blockage from the rising of the Andes, researchers from the University of Washington report in New Phytologist. The new findings show the interplay of biology and geology, says evolutionary biologist and study main author Ana Maria Bedoya.
Changes in the landscape result in changes in the history of these organisms.
What's more, groups of the same species also split, the team found. Populations of Merythrum faeniculiceum in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta and in the Magdalena Basin split around 12 million years ago, while Merythrum utile from those two valleys diverged only roughly 4 million years ago. Previous research of Andean plant diversity had focused on land species. In the new study, Bedoya and her colleagues add information about the evolution of aquatic plants in an area of high diversity.
The rivers were shaped by the Andes, and there are plants which are only found in rivers. To understand how the flora of the most diverse area of the world came together, we cannot ignore water.
Bedoya traveled to her native Colombia, navigated and kayaked to collect 75 individuals of Merythrum faeniculiceum and 40 of Merythrum utile from 21 sites across the Andes and the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. Bedoya says that many of these collections are new records.
Our collections make up more than 50% of all Merythrum specimens collected since 1802.
Part of the reason why these water-loving plants might be poorly represented in herbaria is because most botanists don't like getting their feet wet, Bedoya explains, paraphrasing the Swiss botanist Christopher D. K. Cook. And it's not only their wet habitat what keeps researchers from studying them. Bedoya says that when selecting her study sites, she opted not to visit the Salto de Tequendama, the type locality of Merythrum faeniculiceum, as it is now highly polluted. Things are not good in the south either. Their sampling in Boyaca, in the Orinoco Basin, only included 2 individuals, partly because the populations of Merythrum are quickly disappearing because of the construction of hydroelectric plants, which divert the river flow.
The future of these populations depends on the future of these rivers.
Boyaca is also special in terms of ancestry because the individuals they collected are admixed, meaning that their DNA shares parts with both species from the 2 northern basins, the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta and Magdalena.
This is super interesting because we find there is no gene flow among basins and dispersal is very limited. So then the question is, what is the origin of the Boyaca population?
Even when their sampling was limited, their phylogenetic analyses and their associated inheritance probabilities show that these hybrids result from the merging of the 2 northern ancestral lineages, something known as a reticulation event. The group of researchers suggest two alternatives to explain the mixed genetic identity of the Boyaca population. On one hand, it is possible that seeds from northern populations could have been transported by what a group of geologists have called the Trans-Andean Portal, a fluvial highway that used to connect the Orinoco and Magdalena basins between 13 to 4.1 million years ago. Another alternative is that birds might have dispersed the sticky seeds of both species. Bedoya is passionate about her research and doesn't mind having her feet wet. Water transports her to a distant past, one in which plants are venturing into new territory.
The information contained in the DNA of a plant that one collects in a river can lead us to generate hypotheses of how the landscape was different in the past.
That was the audio version of a blog post on Botany One, available at www.botany.one. Botany One is the weblog of the Annals of Botany Company, a charity set up to promote the study of plants.